All right, everyone. Hello, good afternoon, buenas tardes. Welcome to this Verto education event for first-time travelers. We're going to share tips and tricks for your upcoming experience flying and traveling, perhaps for the first time internationally, perhaps for the first time ever. We're very excited that we get to be a part of that very important moment for you in your life. And so thanks for being here to learn tips and tricks and how to do it well. My name is Mateo. I'm the community manager here at Verto. I organize events for students and families in the pre-departure phase of Verto so that we get to know one another and you feel prepared, excited, and informed for your upcoming study abroad experience with Verto. I want to mention a few things here. First, if you have questions and to participate in the warm-up sort of polls that we have during this event, go ahead and scan the QR code that you see on the screen with your phone. It'll take you to slido.com. That's where we'll participate in polls and we'll get your feedback on different elements of the session today. It's also where we're going to share some community tips. So I'll give you a moment to scan that. If you have questions that come up during the session, you can also put them in the Q&A part there. It's on the left tab at the top, and I will, if the QR codes don't work, no worries. You can use the chat. Or I can share a direct link for you as well. Okay, I just shared in the chat. If you're on your phone, no worries. You can also use the Zoom chat. Okay, so I should also say congratulations. I saw some graduation caps as the emojis that are describing how you're feeling. That's awesome. You are in an exciting moment of your life. So congrats on all of these great transitions as you graduate and are celebrating your accomplishments. Congratulations as well on making the big decision to join Verto and to make Verto your next big step in life. So we're so excited that you said yes and that you are joining us for an upcoming year or semester experience with us. Congrats. So what are we going to go over today? We're going to do a little warm-up question to get to know one another. Then we will share flight tips, how to get cheap flights and where to look for those tickets. We're going to go over airport etiquette. How do you move through an airport? Things you need to know before, during, and after you're in an airport. We're going to review some packing tips so that you can maximize your backpack and hack it. And then we're going to have plenty of time for question and answer. And it's likely we'll be able to have some time at the end for breakout groups as well. So y'all will get to chat with one another. Okay, so we're gonna get right into it. First, I'm gonna encourage you to take a deep breath. If you're joining this call and you're feeling nervous about flying alone for the first time or flying internationally or arriving to an airport and not knowing the language that they're speaking, take a deep breath, okay? There are 1,000 Verto alumni that have come before you and have done it. And there will be thousands more, actually 1,000 this semester that will do the same. So you are in good company and we're gonna do this together. It is a nerve-wracking process at times, but it's one that we're all gonna get through. And it's just a natural part of the start of the Verto experience. So it's okay to be nervous and know that we're gonna get through it together. Here's our first question. I just want to name things that are on our mind. What's the biggest concern you have as a first-time traveler? Okay, so you can use the Slido poll. That was, it's the QR code on the left-hand side of the screen. You could also put it in the chat if you don't have Slido right now. So a couple things have come up. Some losing important documents, taking care of yourself, maybe some safety concerns, transportation, feeling of being overwhelmed. Those are all very valid. Those are parts of any new experience, much less being in an airplane and traveling thousands of miles to get to your future home. So I want to thank you for mentioning those parts of traveling. It's normal and totally okay to be concerned with those. For those of you who are joined on a cell phone, you can come off mute or you can share in the chat. What is your other biggest concern as a first-time traveler? I'll give you a moment. Another concern was the flight getting canceled or delayed and arriving outside the arrival window. Okay, that's valid, especially in these complicated COVID times that we live in. Anyone else wanted to share a concern? Feel free to come off mute or put in the chat. Okay, being confident or sticking up for myself if something goes wrong. Definitely. And especially, how do I do that in another language or in another culture? It can be intimidating. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Okay, I'll take one more maybe. Anyone wants to come off mute or put in the chat? Okay. Well, thanks folks for leaving your concerns here. I think that we're going to be able to address most of these in our session today. So that is some good news. All right. So first we're going to start with some flight tips. For those of you who haven't booked your flights yet, which are due June 1st in the portal, you're going to want to listen up. For those of you who have already purchased your flights, that's okay. Here's some tips because it's likely that this will be the first of many times you'll be traveling now as a global leader. And so here's some tips that you can keep in mind for next time. So first, I always use flights.google.com as a way to check different prices. And so what's cool about flights.google.com is they have a price grid where you can check, for example, Merida, which is where I live, to Seville. And let's just put these dates, for example. If you select the price graph, it can tell you, it can show you what's the typical price for that flight. And if you do the date grid, it can also show you where where could it be cheaper to fly on different dates. Okay, and so this is, so for example, this green one here is a really good date because it's about a few thousand pesos cheaper. I pay it in pesos, but you'll probably pay in US dollars. So this is a great tool for you to keep in your back pocket always as you're looking through different flight options. Here's some other apps that students and staff have used in the past. There's a website called Student Universe. There's one called hopper.com. United Airlines is also typically has pretty good rates. Skyscanner is another popular one. One that I didn't list, but people have used in the past is expedia.com. And so there's a few different flight sourcing websites that you can look at. It's important to shop around, check multiple sources, because it could be the case that you'll find a deal in one place that's not offered in another place. So as you're looking for flights, you want to keep your options open, just as you would for any other big purchase that you're making. Shop around before you make a big choice. I should also mention, be flexible. Sometimes flights can come up a little bit cheaper if it means traveling from out of a different airport. So for example, if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, it might be cheaper to fly out of San Jose or Oakland than San Francisco. You might want to check if you're comfortable arriving or departing from an airport that is 50 miles from where you live. That might be an option for you to check out different flights as well. I want to mention you should look at layover times, especially if the deal seems too good to be true. That could be the case that it's because it has an extensive layover, looking at 12 hours or more. You want to avoid those flights, especially when you're flying with Verto, because you don't want to be stuck somewhere for too long that isn't a part of your Verto destination. You'll arrive to your site very tired and you won't have slept well. And so you want to be careful to avoid those long layover times. As I mentioned, you also want to compare and contrast departing airports near you. So if you're able to travel to the next city over, it may make sense for you. It may mean a couple $100 difference. That's what it's been like for me a few times when I've traveled to the Bay Area. Okay, as a Verto participant, you do, though, want to keep in mind that you need to arrive within the arrival and departure windows that are listed on your checklist. And so those are in the student portal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can chat me and I'll chat with you after this event. But you do need to honor those times. And that's because first, you arrive during a time when our staff can pick you up and take you safely to your student housing. And second, our departure times are suggested and required, keeping in mind in the case of a student visa that you're leaving within reason of your student visa, and also that you're leaving after finals have completed. So you want to make sure that your flight, even if it's even if there's a price difference, that you are arriving and departing during the times that Verto has suggested to you. And that's in order to avoid any complications with your arrival or departure. Another tip is that if you're going to have a layover, you should try and make sure that that layover is in the United States. And that's because in the era in which we live, different countries have different COVID restrictions, including entrance restrictions just for being in an airport at a different country. So you want to make sure that you are doing all of your layovers in the United States where possible. That avoids any unnecessarily complicated entrance barriers in your layover sites. And as I mentioned, you want to avoid very long layovers because it leads for a very exhausting travel experience, and it's expensive to be in airports as well. The food is very expensive, and it's just not an ideal travel itinerary. Some helpful tips for you to know: most airlines allow for a 24-hour cancel, so you can purchase a flight and go back the next day and cancel it without penalty in most cases. So that's good to know. If you see a good deal and you're not sure if between today and tomorrow the price is going to change, you can purchase it, and knowing that most airlines offer a 24-hour cancel fee or offer free cancellation within 24 hours. You should also check your ticket to see what's included. In some cases, they'll give you an assigned seat. In other cases, you can select your seat for free. Also, there are different baggage sort of options. Depending on your airline, they may give you a free checked bag, free carry-on, a free personal item, and a carry-on is different than a personal item. So you'll have extra space as you're traveling in the airplane. So be aware of what comes included with your ticket. Okay, before we move on, I want to hold some time. Does anyone else have any flight tips or tricks that they want to share with this group, or any questions regarding to purchasing flights? And feel free to come off mute.
So while looking for flights to get to Florence, I've noticed that the only layovers I can get are either in Germany or Amsterdam. And they're typically between, like, the layovers are typically between like 6 to 12 hours long that I've seen.
Yeah. So there aren't layovers in the US that go directly from the US to Florence.
No.
In that case, I think it's fine. You'll definitely want to choose the 6-hour layover as opposed to the 12-hour layover. And I can double check with the student onboarding advisors, but it seems to me that as part of the European Union that those countries are fine, or they will follow the same practice as Italy will in regards to what entry sort of requirements you need with COVID testing or vaccines and things like that. So it's something you should double check at any rate, is if you're looking at a layover site, does that layover site have different requirements than your final destination? Because you don't want to come up against a surprise denial to an airport because you weren't aware of the requirements.
Right. And as for my first question from the chat, what should I do if my flight gets delayed or canceled? Because every time I've ever flown internationally, I've been stuck at an airport for 3 days due to some last minute cancellation.
No. Okay. Well, first, I'm going to put it out there into the ether that that's not going to happen this time.
Okay.
So we won't have to worry about that. If it does happen, we are going to provide you a phone number and an email address of a Verto staff member who is going to keep track of all flights and be in contact with you the day of travel. So if your flight gets canceled, we'll also know, because as you submit your flight information through the checklist, we're going to track all flights. And so we'll know what airport you're stuck at, and we'll expect that you'll be letting us know if anything changes. But it's happened before. Flights get canceled. The Verto team is going to be keeping tabs with you and making sure that you are safe and still on track to get to your location.
Okay.
Hi, I also have a quick question. So I noticed, like, for the flight arrival and departure window, it's from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. local time. Is local time referring to like the country I'm going to? Like, for example,
Yes.
Spain? Okay. All right, cool.
Yep, that's right. Right. Well, we're going to go into our next section, and then if there's other tips or questions that come up around flights, we can get back into that. Okay, airport etiquette. Here's some things you should know before you step foot in an airport. First, if your first flight is domestic, you want to arrive at least 2 hours ahead. And that's because flights, sometimes they can be fully booked. And so it takes a while to drop off your luggage that you're checking in. You just want to be prepared for anything that comes up. For example, let's not make this happen, but if you forget an important document at home, you want to be able to give yourself enough time to go back for it or send someone to bring it to you. So always make sure you have at least 2 hours if your first destination in your flight is domestic, and 3 hours if your first connecting flight is international. That will give you plenty of time to get checked in and settled. You also, when you're checking your bag at the counter, confirm with the attendant that they're going to send your bag to the final destination. In some cases, depending on the airline, they won't do that for you. You'll have to pick up your bag and move it to another conveyor belt when you arrive. And some people forget that. And so that your baggage gets stranded at your layover site. So you just want to double check that they are taking care of that. And if they're not, that you're aware of that, so that when you arrive to your connecting flight in your layover, that you'll know to pick up your checked bag and move it to its respective spot. I should also mention airport weather is kind of intense. Sometimes it's really hot, sometimes it's really cold. And so dress in layers. You want to dress comfortably, perhaps not your pajamas, but also not your prom dress or tuxedo. You're going to want to wear a few different layers that you could take off or put on depending on how cold or warm you typically get. The fun part about that too is if you bring enough clothes, you can turn it into a pillow when you're on your flight. And then another note here that I think is important to clarify with your families is they might not be able, you might not be able to text them or get in communication with them the moment that you arrive to your location. And that's because maybe you're going to buy a local SIM card when you get there, and so you won't have any data, or maybe at the airport that you're arriving to, there's no Wi-Fi, so you won't be able to connect. So let your family and friends know that that's okay. That doesn't mean that you haven't arrived. A better way for them to keep track of you is to give them your flight number so they can be assured that your flight has arrived. And then once you arrive to your student housing where there's Wi-Fi and perhaps you've purchased a SIM card for your phone, then you could get in contact with them and let them know that you've arrived. It's something to note because family and friends, they care about you and they want to make sure you've arrived safely. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind is you're going to be traveling for a while, whether you're going to Costa Rica or London or Prague. These are distant places. And so you're going to want to think, well, how am I going to spend my time in the airplane? If you've never boarded an airplane, it's fun and exciting, and then you're in the air and kind of nothing happens for a few hours. And so think to yourself, what's going to be best for me in that time? How can I get in the right mindset? Because once you arrive, it's go time. And so for some people, they bring books to sort of keep distracted on something that brings them joy. Other people bring a journal to start reflecting on what your goal is for Verto and start thinking about, your first week, what do you want to accomplish? You'll want to make sure you have a charged phone. It's always helpful just to have a phone with apps that are fun for you, that don't require internet while you're in the air. You'll also want to look at your airline and see if they have an entertainment app. Now, some airlines, they offer free movies, but you have to download the app before. And so once you're in the air, you won't have access to download it. So make sure that you are aware of what the entertainment situation is, because if you do want to watch some movies, it's always fun on airplanes. You want to make sure you're able to do that. Another hot tip, have headphones with a cable, because most airlines are not equipped with Bluetooth capabilities. And so your AirPods are not going to work if you have a television screen in the front of the seat, in back of the seat in front of you. So have headphones that have an aux cable, just so that you can access any movies if you want to watch them. And then, as I mentioned, get comfortable, get creative. Oftentimes I use a jacket as my little sort of neck pillow instead of bringing a neck pillow that just sits in my closet as soon as I arrive somewhere. So make yourself comfy. You can take off your shoes. There's no law that says you can't. It may seem a little goofy, but if that makes you more comfortable, you can do it. I'm giving you permission to take off your shoes in the airplane. I do it too. Lastly, I'll say, as soon as you arrive to your gate, you want to look for other participants. And so we're sending Verto t-shirts to you precisely so that you can wear them as you travel. And so be on the lookout for the gray t-shirt that says Verto, because especially in your closest flight to your destination, you may run into some Verto participants. And so get excited to meet them. Right. So what happens during a layover? It's likely that most of us have layovers. As soon as you get off the airplane, you immediately want to go to one of the big screens in the airport and check when your next flight leaves and what gate it's leaving from. You want to make a beeline directly to that gate to make sure that you're in the right place, to make sure that you hear any important announcements that come from the speaker. It's oftentimes that announcements are made only close to that gate. So you want to make sure you get to the right spot as soon as you can. A tip here is that if your flight is has a long layover, and I'm talking 2 or more hours, it might not be on the screen at first, and that's okay. So just sit somewhere near the screen so you can check and see as the new flights pop up. And know that if you get to that 2-hour range or 1.5 hour range and you don't see your flight listed, you probably want to speak to an attendant at an information desk just to make sure you're not missing anything. Another tip that people forget is stay hydrated. You're traveling and that's exhausting. And so you're going to want to drink plenty of water to make sure that you're arriving healthy and your mind is working great, your body's working great, you're making the best first impression that you can when you arrive to your Verto location. Lastly, I'll mention it's important to always keep your belongings with you. We have had Verto participants in the past forget cell phones or forget important documents at the airport. Do a quick check. So keep your cell phone, your wallet, everything in a pocket that you know that's where you usually keep it, or in a bag where you usually keep it, and always do a quick pat down. Make sure you have everything essential that you need before you move. And the best move is to get to a gate, set up your little camp, have your carry-on next to you and your personal item next to you, and try not to move around as much. So find a comfortable spot and just stay in that spot until it's time to board your plane. Another thing to keep in mind before you land, this is when you land, but something that you want to do check before you land, does the airport you're arriving to have free Wi-Fi? In most cases, the airports that we require Verto participants to arrive to have Wi-Fi. I can't speak to all of them for how long they have Wi-Fi or the quality of the Wi-Fi. So do a little bit of research and see, will you have Wi-Fi? It's good for you to know in advance so that you won't be freaked out if you don't have Wi-Fi. And your family and friends will know that they won't receive a message from you because you won't have any connection if you have no other way to contact them. I also want to recommend that you keep all your important documents in one place. That includes your passport, that includes any entry documents that you need, whether that be proof of your student visa or a COVID vaccine, depending on what each location requires. Don't rely on you having a screenshot in your phone. You also want to print out those documents just in case your cell phone dies or you misplace your cell phone or something. You want to be in a place where you have everything you need on your person to enter the country safely. And then lastly, yes, let your friends and family know when you arrive to your housing. And you should know that might not be as soon as you arrive to the country. For example, in Costa Rica, the student housing is a few hours away from the San Jose airport. So just let your family and friends know it's okay if they don't hear from you for a few hours. You're just traveling to your location. And as soon as you get to your location, before you eat dinner, before you get settled, before you start decorating your student housing, let your family and friends know, even if it's a quick text message, so that they feel relieved to know that you've arrived safely. Otherwise, they'll come to Verto staff asking for you, and they're going to know if you've arrived safely. And it's easiest and most meaningful for your family if you do that for them. Okay, so before we move on to our last tip, which is on packing, I want to source some tips that people have. So any advice for those of you who have traveled before or that you've read in other places, what tips do you have around traveling? So let me give a second to turn on our poll. any advice that you have that I didn't mention that you want to share with this group around travel. And so you could put it in the chat. You could also put it in the Slido poll. Olivia asked, are you not allowed to arrive earlier than date of pickup? It depends on the country. So you're going to want to check in with your student onboarding advisor to make sure that you are in alignment with your sort of student visa. Some students choose to arrive early, most students choose not to. But again, you're going to want to communicate with your student onboarding advisor. Will our onboarding advisors provide us with the student visa information? Yes, and there will be checklist items in the student portal. They're not live yet. They're set to go live soon that will walk you through how to apply for your visa. So if you are a Florence, Prague, or Seville participant, you're going to want to make sure that you, in this next week or next 2 weeks, you log into the student portal and you review that checklist item. Ooh, yes, good tip. So not everyone knows this. In most airlines, you're able to bring a carry-on, which is a standard sort of bag that fits on an overhead. And you can also bring a personal item or a purse. Depending on what you feel comfortable using, that could look like a laptop bag. It could look like a smaller backpack. It could look like a large purse. Usually when you have a personal item, they're not gonna weigh it. They're not gonna sort of put it to any sort of test. And so you kind of have two carry-ons. You have a larger one that fits overhead and the smaller one that's supposed to go under your seat once the flight takes off. So good tip. Additionally, a very good tip is to carry backpacks instead of shoulder carry-ons over long travels. And a reason for that is also because your carry-on could serve as a weekend bag. If you are going to go on a weekend excursion during your Verto experience, or if there's, if you're traveling around the city and you're trying to move materials around, that backpack could be very helpful. So it's not just a carry-on that sits in your closet. It's rather something that becomes useful for you for your duration of your experience. So yeah, think creatively. How can this carry-on also be used in different ways? And if it can't be used in different ways, it might be reason for you to consider a different carry-on. What are the COVID restrictions? Are there mask mandates, etc.? From what I know, I'm not sure. I'm not the best person. And this is probably going to change between when I answer now and when you board a flight. Thanks, Ali. They do depend on the airport in the particular country. And so one packing tip that I have is to bring a couple masks just in case one of your masks gets sweaty or you spill coffee on it or the strap breaks. It's reasonable to assume that you're going to need to use a mask when you're traveling. Okay, so let's move on. Oops, before we go into packing, I have some tips for packing. All right, so first, what goes into a carry-on backpack or luggage? So you're going to want to bring a change of clothes, and that means everything: a shirt, pants, underwear, socks. And the reason is, in a small number of cases, but it does happen, sometimes luggage gets lost. And so if you arrive to your location and your checked bag doesn't, you want to make sure that you have a change of clothes that you feel comfortable in so that you're not in your airport clothes for more than your airport travel. You're also going to want to bring a toothbrush and toothpaste, especially for those of us who have longer layovers or multiple layovers. It just helps to stay fresh and sort of feel like a human if you are practicing hygiene. And so you can buy little tubes and there's these like little carry-on toothbrushes, or you could bring the toothbrush that you'll use during your experience. Put that in your carry-on as opposed to your checked bag. Also bring a charger. That seems like a tip that applies to anything in life, but especially when you're traveling through an airport. Bring a charger with an adapter in case you're going to have a layover in a country that has different outlets. A good one is to bring menstrual products. You never know what could happen or how long you might be in a layover. Things do happen. So you want to be prepared and have everything you need to feel comfortable while you travel. As someone mentioned, you want to bring a couple different masks with you. They could be the cloth masks, just in case one of your masks gets dirty or lost, or breaks or things like that. Another tip here is chewing gum, and that's because some people get when you fly in high altitudes, your ears could pop, or they could get ear pressure, and so chewing gum helps you not build up ear pressure. So have some chewing gum, also keeps your breath fresh. And then lastly, you want to have a reusable water bottle. This will be helpful for you for your entire semester. And so it doesn't have to be, a fancy Yeti. It could be anything that you're already using now, but you're going to want to have something that you could use during your flight and beyond. And it can't be full when you arrive to the airport because they don't allow liquids to go through security. But as soon as you get through the gate, usually airports will have like a water fountain where you can refill your water bottle. Folks have already mentioned this, but your carry-on could turn into your weekend bag. So you want to think through your carry-on and make sure it's something that you would feel comfortable maybe going on a hike in, or throwing in the back of a car, or walking with for a mile. It's hard to say, depending on what you want to do during your free time. This bag could be helpful for you. So think about your lifestyle and if your carry-on could be helpful for you as you do weekend excursions. And then a tip that a lot of students share, a lot of alumni, is to pack lighter than you think. And so start with clothes that you feel comfortable in and you feel like best represent you and your style, and you feel like you're the most you in. You also want to bring clothes that you can sort of mix and match for different days or occasions. You don't want to bring that pair of shoes that only match with that outfit, because they're going to sit in your closet and then you won't have as many options. So try to bring clothes or tones or sort of styles that you think could mix and match and create more outfits out of a few pieces. And then an important tip here is, if you are used to specific products because you have sort of certain like if your skin is really sensitive, or if your hair is used to a specific type of product, you might want to consider, is this a product that's so specific that I couldn't get it in my location? And if it is, you should bring enough of that product that could last you for the whole time, or at least for the first month while you look for that product in your location. And that's just so that you feel comfortable and feel like you sort of you're able to present your best self. And so think through that. For some students, that also means like deodorant. I don't know if folks have a specific deodorant that they use. For example, for me, there's certain deodorants that break me out or like give me a skin rash. So I try to bring a deodorant that I know works for me, just so that when I'm traveling, I don't have to deal with that sort of interruption to my travels. I think we already went through the fashion. Another thing that I had just mentioned is, so besides your carry-on having sort of an emergency stash, you could also consider having a month's supply of the menstrual product and deodorant that you prefer. And this is so that as you're getting used to your new environment, you have products that you're used to using. In different locations, they have different options for deodorant and for menstrual products. And so if you are used to a very particular sort of product, you might want to consider, is that something that you could obtain in your location? And if it's not, bring enough so that you feel like you can present your best self. And then a last tip here is to bring a camera. So you might want to bring a disposable or a small camera, something that besides a phone, it could be a fun way for you to create moments and look back on your adventure and all the memories that you've made. And it adds a sort of a fun extra sort of tool for you to remember your experience. Okay, so we're gonna get back to community tips. What didn't I mention that other folks think are important for folks to know? Packing tips. Ali has put in some great tips here. To wear your heaviest shoes through the airport and pack the lighter ones. Yes, definitely. Feel free to put in the chat, or you can scan the code for the Slido. What advice do you have for your peers on packing? I see someone's typing, that's great. roll your clothes so you can fit more. Definitely. Think about how to use up all the space in your luggage. For example, if you're bringing shoes, you can put socks inside those shoes so that there's no empty space in your bag. Another tip could be if you're bringing a laundry bag, stuff it with clothes that are rolled up and seal it as tight as you can to maximize use of that bag. Allie's coming up with some great tips here too. You'll have to put your laptop in your carry-on and you'll have to take it out during security. So make sure it's accessible and easy enough for you to take out. Yeah, because they ask you to take your laptop out of its bag or anything and put it in its own tray. So keep it somewhere that it won't be too difficult for you to access. Another tip is weigh your suitcase at home. And one way you can do this is if you don't have a weigher, if you have a scale, get on the scale, weigh yourself, and then step off the scale, hold your bag and get back on the scale. And you have a makeshift way of measuring how much your bag weighs. Most airlines are pretty strict about being under the weight limit, especially with your checked bag. It's usually 50, 45 pounds. So try to make sure that you make that, because you don't want to have any unnecessary fees, or you don't want to have to throw away clothes or belongings in an airport. I've done that and it's not fun to have to choose what shirt to throw away. Great, some tips coming in. Prepare for any kind of weather clothes wise. That's true. It's fall in all of our locations, and that looks different for each location. But that could mean some rain, it could mean some cold, it could mean some warmth. So you're gonna wanna be prepared for those different weathers. And also, if you're traveling, you're gonna wanna have the right gear for that too. So if you're someone who likes hiking, you might wanna bring some hiking boots. If you're someone who gets hot easily, you might want to bring a windbreaker that's rain resistant as opposed to a full-on winter coat. So it depends on what your lifestyle is too. And then my family uses Ziploc bags for our clothes to suck out the air. Yeah, and then those Ziploc bags can be useful for you during your experience as well. So you could store food in them, or important documents if it's raining outside. Like there's lots of uses for Ziploc bags. So that's good. All right. Well, I've shared a lot of tips. And so now I want to open it up for question and answer. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to come off mute, or you can also put the Q&A in Slido and we can share them those ways as well. So what questions do people have?
I have a question, and it's more for like Costa Rica.
Okay.
Do you have to bring your own bedding?
I want to say no. I don't think so.
Okay.
No, you don't. In the dorms in Costa Rica, they're shared dorms, and they provide a lamp, bedding, pillows, toilet paper. There's even like a shampoo dispenser in some bathrooms. But no, you won't need to have your own bedding.
So let's say I do decide to do like the homestay in Spain. What would happen if like I'm not comfortable with the family I'm staying with? What would be the next option for me?
So you'll have your care team with you, which is made up of your student life coordinator and your academic success coach. Those will be two mentors that you could bring up your situation with, and they'll help you sort of figure out what is the next best step. It'll be important to figure out first what is making you uncomfortable, and is there a way for us to work through that together, or is it better to find a different option? And so as we're navigating new cultures and new families, different people have different communication styles or expectations for housing. And so things will be bound to come up. The good thing is you're going to have your care team to help you navigate through that. Yeah, you won't be in a situation where we're going to say, suck it up. This is your only option, because we want you to have a safe and healthy experience. Ooh, a question came in. Can you depart a date earlier than December 10th? Maybe Ali could back me up, but I think that the answer is no, and that is because of our final schedule. So it's very important as a Verto participant, you are a student and you are bound to academic expectations, and that includes a finals week. And so if you have any questions, I probably would double check with your student onboarding advisor, but if the departure time in the checklist is there because it is the earliest that you can leave before finals is over. Yeah, leaving before finals puts you at risk for not completing your academic obligations, and we don't want that to happen to you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, if there's not, this is good timing. We've ended in 45 minutes. So I would like to invite people to be a part of a breakout group in just a second. So give me just one moment. I'm gonna end our recording and then I will explain our activity.